Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 5th of August. Sorry for yesterday July, of course yesterday video was of the 1st of August, and today we have a lot of things to discuss. And of course let's start with the report of Minister of Defense of Russian Federation. Today they gave us some numbers. Of course, the numbers are much less than in comparison with the previous days, but anyway, the Russians has the numbers. If we take a look at the map of these positions, according to the Russian sources, they attacked the area near Zaporozhye or Zaporozhye area, and as the result of their attack, they attacked the 44th Artillery Brigade. They destroyed few artillery systems, and this artillery brigade, 44th, lost around 150 soldiers. If you take a look at this map of this position, there is no 44th artillery brigade in this area. I suppose that maybe there was a few battalions in this area of that brigade, and the main position of that brigade is somewhere else. Also, there was a case around 72nd Mechanized Brigade, 58th Mechanized Brigade, our famous brigades we were talking about during the previous weeks. The Russians are still hunting this area, these brigades. They're trying to focus their artillery rocket strikes, and they're trying to reduce their headquarters in the area on the front line. Another important update we got from the north, from the Kharkiv area, from our 92nd Mechanized Brigade, but there were no report about the artillery or rocket strike against this brigade. The Russian Ministry of Defense told us that this brigade decided to take some positions in Kharkiv, in other towns, and for that purposes, they needed to take position of civilians, their apartments, their flats, their houses, and they tried using the force to move civilians from their houses. And the Russians are saying that there was a conflict in one place, that civilians refused those 92nd Mechanized Brigade and refused those Foreign Legion that in this area to leave their apartments for their purposes, because we understand if the Ukrainians are taking some places, that means that sooner or later the Russians are going to strike this area. So that's why the civilians refused, and there was a fight against civilians and the Ukrainians. And as a result of that fight, the Ukrainians killed few civilians because they refused to leave their apartments for the 4th Legion or for that 92nd Mechanized Brigade. So we see that civilians, let's say that there are more and more cases on the East front line when civilians refuses to follow orders of the Ukrainians because they understand, they see everything. If we are taking a look at this map, if we are following many channels, not just Military Summary, but many others, we see the problems of Ukrainians. And we understand only the situation according to the numbers we receive and according to the changes on the map. But believe me, the civilians on these places, they understand much more better than we. They understand the real problem. You know that a few days ago there was an order, law adopted in Ukraine. According to this law, every single person in the east of Ukraine on this area that is still in the Ukrainians should be evacuated. And people from this area started a strike against this law because they don't want to leave this area. They already agree with Russian occupation, and we can understand them because we understand that, of course, our health is the most important, but if we're talking about health, our family, our house is also a very important thing for all of us. Of course, nobody wants to leave its own house, its own home, and so on. And it doesn't mean that these people are traitors and that these people want to join Russia. They just don't want to leave their home. But the Ukrainians don't understand the situation, and there is a lot of conflicts on the front line between the civilians and between the Ukrainian army. So we'll see and we'll follow this situation as well. If we're talking about the front lines, there are a lot of changes on the front lines. If we're talking about the area between Bakhmut and Seversk and the south, let's call it Zaitsevo, the entire front line has been collapsed. If you take a look at the West Sources map, we see that towns Gladasovo and Travnevo is still on the Ukrainians. But if we take a look at the Russian sources map, we're gonna see that these towns, both these towns, has fallen. Travnevo, Gladasovo, these two towns is under Russian control. These towns, you see this on this map, this area. So let's mark this area just for better understanding of situation. If you remember, few videos ago, many videos ago, we discussed about three projections of United Kingdom intelligence projection, of US projection, and military summary projection. If you remember, there were three scenarios in this case. The United Kingdom intelligence were saying that the Russians are planning to start their offensive operation. It was like 3 weeks ago, or even in the months, towards Slaviansk. The United States of America, their intelligence told us that the Russians are planning to attack Seversk and Bakhmut. And your military summary told you that the main goal, the Russians' main target, is to attack Bakhmut and to collapse the south. That will open the Russians a door to start their offensive operation towards New York agglomeration and towards Chasov Yar, the town that located, let's say, on the northwest from the south of Bakhmut, from Kadema, this town. By the way, there are very heavy clashes in Kadema. And a month has passed. And as you can see, as I see, the US intelligence was right, at least for 50%, because they told us that the main goal of the Russians would be the attack towards Seversk and attack towards Bakhmut. And yesterday we got report, of course, from the Russian sources. The Ukrainians haven't confirmed this information, that the Russians entered Bakhmut, entered Artyomovsk, if we're talking about another title of this town. And now there is a very heavy clashes on the street, this one, Patrika Lumumbi, this street. The Russians didn't give us any information about how much houses or flats or the territory they took control over. The only thing they told that they entered this town and that they managed to establish some fire positions, some control over the east part of Artyomovsk. So we can say that the ground battle in Artyomovsk has started. There were no updates about their progress in this town during the day. Maybe they took more towns, more blocks, I don't know. But I suppose that they haven't took anything because the Ukrainians, I suppose that they moved their forces and they were preparing this town for a very long time during the previous weeks, months. So I suppose that they stopped Russians and now there are very heavy clashes all along the front line on the east side of this town. And of course we can say that military summary channel was also correct about its projection, because my projection was that the Russians would try to collapse the south and Seversk, and I was wrong as the United States intelligence that Seversk, we see that the Russians reduce the pressure against the Seversk. Maybe it's a trick, maybe it's a trap, maybe they want to think, maybe they want to force us to think that Seversk is not important, who knows. Maybe as soon as the Ukrainians are going to move all their mid brigades from the north towards Bakhmut, they will start their offensive operation, they will try to collapse Seversk, because if you take a look at the map of this position, you see, let's calculate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 brigades. 12 brigades around Seversk, according to the map of this position. So I suppose that around Seversk there are around 20,000 soldiers. Of course, it will take a lot of time to crack this nut. But the Russians decided just to freeze these forces in this area, and they decided to start their offensive operation against the forces in Artyomovsk or Bakhmut and the south, and try to collapse this area. And to tell the truth, they're doing their job very well. By the way, if you take a look at this map, there are some changes in this area. And the most important one is that if you take a look at the zoom, there is update on the 2nd of August that Ukrainians moved their 93rd Mechanized Brigade to Izum bridgehead to stop the Russians. This brigade used to be in another place, not here. Another important update in this area, there was something this one, that if you're talking about Donetsk, If you remember, Donetsk used to be under protection of 54th, 56th Mechanized Brigade, and today we got 21st Motorized Battalion Sarmat that were moved toward Donetsk in Pesky. In Pesky, these brigades were moved to reinforce Pesky because the fact that Pesky has fallen. But we will move to Pesky very soon. Let's complete with Artyomovsk and Bakhmut. So as you can see, the US intelligence and military summary projection 50% was correct. That both the US was correct that the Russians will start the offensive operation towards Bakhmut, and they did this. They started yesterday in the evening trying to crack the east part of this town. This area is totally fortified, totally mined, and I don't know how much losses the Russians are going to have to crack this net. And another important update on the south. The Russians has completely collapsed the south. I suppose that maybe today or tomorrow we're gonna see the collapse of Kadema, Zaitsevo, and the Russians will reach the river Bakhmut from the east. And from that very moment they will be able to start the attack from the south to clear this area, Zaitsevo, this small village. And then they will be able to attack Bakhmut from this side of the river Bakhmut, and also they will be able to develop their offensive operation towards Donetsk and New York, and they will be able to encircle this town. To tell the truth, I understand that there are a lot of people on the channel who is pro-Ukrainian, there are a lot of people on the channel who is pro-Russian, but I must say, because it's my opinion, you won't be able to find this any information from any other sources. I see the entire front line collapse. The Ukrainians are losing their position, and I don't see any possibilities in any configuration when the Ukrainians are able to repair the situation. I suppose that only involving of NATO countries in this conflict are able to stop the entire Ukrainian collapse on the front line. So we finish with Bakhmut. Now let's talk about Donetsk and the towns around Donetsk. If you take a look at this map, you're going to see that Pesky is still considered as the territory under Ukrainian control. But today we got information from the Russians that they established final entire control over Pesky. Furthermore, they completed the clearing operation and entire Pesky is under Russian. Furthermore, the Russians are pushing Avdiivka in the front. We were expecting that the Russians will try to encircle this area, but because of that fact that Ukrainians moved every single pieces of artillery towards the south, towards Kherson area, they thought that these fortifications are enough to stop the Russians, but they were wrong, because the Russians has a very powerful artillery. Of course, if we're talking about 10 or 100 shells per day, the Ukrainians were correct, saying that their fortifications are able to stand against 100 shells per day. But as we discussed yesterday, the Russians uses just 6,500 per day just in Pesky shells every day. And there are 4 areas: Marinka, Krasnogorovka, Pesky, Avdiivka. So I suppose that the Russians were using around 30,000 shells per day on this front line. Believe me, that's a lot. Believe me that using this massive shelling you are able to reduce any kind of fortification till ruins, not even in hours but in minutes. And the Russians did their job well, because the Ukrainians, they moved all the artillery from this front line. And today we can say that entire Pesky has fallen. The area that where the Ukrainians were able to hold their position since the 2014, they lost this position just in few days because of moving artillery back from this front line. The same situation is with Marinka. According to the Russian sources, they control more than 75%. If we take a look at this map, we can say that if the Russians control just 75%, I suppose that they control this part of Marinka, and that Ukrainians still have positions on this bank of this river, of this reservoir of the water, and so on. But I suppose that maybe by the end of this weekend, this part of Marinka is going to collapse as well. If we are talking about this fortification, you need to understand one important thing, that this fortification is one of the most powerful fortification, not just in Ukraine, in the world. This fortification has been built since 2014. They were built for 8 years, and the main goal was to build them as much as possible fortified to stop the Russians. And these fortifications were cracked in few weeks as soon as the Ukrainians moved their artillery to the south. So I suppose, and this offensive operation explain us the offensive operation in the south towards Gusarovka, because from the global scope we understand that the Russians maybe started their global encirclement of Donbas arc group of Ukrainian forces that located here. And if we're talking about the number, there are still around 100,000 of Ukrainian soldiers. I don't think that, of course, in the global scope the Russians are able to encircle. They will, but they will encircle much less, because during this process, they will crack and reduce the Ukrainians as much as possible. Now we understand that the Ukrainians, they need to start the offensive operation in the south as fast as possible. Not because of the fact that they need to force the Russians to move some forces to the south to reduce their pressure here. No, this is not the reason. There is only one reason the Ukrainians needed on this bank of the river, is to push the Russians on that side of the river, on the right side. If you take a look at this map, the right side of this river. Because this Dnieper, this one river that leads from the south towards Kiev, this is Dnieper, is the only natural barrier that can, I can't say even stop the Russians, that can hold them for a while, maybe for half a year, before they crack this barrier as well. So if the Russians have their bridgehead on this bank of the river, that means that as soon as they crack this net in Donetsk, in Donbas arc operation, they will be able to develop their offensive operation in the south. They will be able to develop their encirclement operation in Kharkiv and to encircle this town before winter comes. And that will be a very big problem for the Ukrainians. But if the Ukrainians are able to push the Russians back on that side of the river, at least they will be able to win few months, maybe a year. And who knows what is going to happen during this year. Maybe during this year, this war is going to end. And the Ukrainians at least will be able to save this Ukraine. This one, that located on the left side of these arrows. And that's it for today. Military Summary Channel reminds you that we condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, and have a good weekend. Bye bye.